The story opens with a heart-stopping scene in Maya Johnson's Atlanta brownstone where she crouches in darkness, clutching 5-year-old Lena against her chest as Korean voices echo through the hallway and glass shatters in the kitchen below. The hook is the immediate life-or-death danger combined with an impossible choice. Maya must dial the number she memorized 5 years ago but swore never to use. A direct line to Lee Sang-ho, a man who commands an empire built on blood and shadows, to save their daughter. The emotional core is established when Lena whispers, "Mommy, why do I look like the man on your phone?" And Maya sees her old wallpaper photo of Sang-ho, a secret she couldn't erase, reflecting in her daughter's confused eyes. When Maya finally makes the call, her trembling words collapse the barrier between past and present, love and terror. "Sang-ho, they found us. Our daughter has your eyes, and they're going to kill us both." Instantly bridging the gap between a ruthless crime thriller and a devastating family drama. 5 years ago, Maya Johnson stood in the Liam Samsung Museum of Art in Seoul, her fingers tracing the exhibition catalog as she evaluated a controversial installation for her firm's acquisition report. The piece, a meditation on violence and beauty, had drawn protests and praise in equal measure. She was so absorbed in her notes that she didn't notice the man who'd stopped beside her until he spoke. "What do you see?" His English was perfect, his voice low and cultured. Maya turned. He was sharp-featured and immaculately dressed, his tailored suit probably worth more than her monthly salary. Dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I see an artist confronting uncomfortable truths," she said carefully. "I see something worth owning." He gestured to a gallery attendant without breaking eye contact. "I'll take it." The attendant blinked. "Sir, the price is irrelevant." He finally looked away from Maya, just long enough to dismiss the man. Then that devastating attention returned. "Im Sang-woo, may I buy you coffee and hear more of your uncomfortable truths?" 3 months. That's how long Maya's world became consumed by Lee Sang-ho. Expensive dinners, late-night conversations about art and philosophy, passion that left her breathless. She knew he was dangerous. The way people moved around him, the deference, the fear poorly masked as respect. But she told herself he was just a powerful businessman until the night she left a restaurant through the back entrance and saw him in the alley. 2 men. One on his knees. Sang-ho standing over them, utterly calm as his associates delivered methodical brutality. His voice was conversational as he explained why betrayal carried consequences. When he glanced up and saw Maya frozen in the doorway, something flickered across his face, regret perhaps, or calculation. She caught the first flight to Atlanta the next morning. 2 weeks later, she sat in her tiny bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, knowing she could never go back. She built her new life brick by careful brick. A brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, a position at the Benson Gallery, a daughter with curly hair and eyes that held secrets. She never told Sang-ho. How could she? Lena deserved normalcy, safety, a mother who didn't look over her shoulder at every shadow. For 5 years it worked. 3 days before everything shattered, Maya's boss cornered her in the gallery office. "The anniversary gala needs a human element," Richard insisted, gesturing at layouts. "Your daughter is adorable, Maya. One photo, her looking at art, it's perfect PR. Curator as working mother, culture as family value." Maya hesitated, but Richard had given her the job when she was newly pregnant and desperate. She owed him. "Just one photo. Lena stays with me the whole time." The society photographer found them near a contemporary piece. Lena studying the canvas with that intense focus she'd inherited from her father. The camera clicked. The child's profile was perfect. Those striking features, the unusual beauty of her mixed heritage. "Gorgeous," the photographer murmured. "Absolutely gorgeous." The image went viral as part of an Faces of Atlanta culture feature. Maya didn't know until it was too late. 7,000 miles away in Seoul, Jiwoo performed his morning media skim while his employer slept. He'd been searching for Maya Johnson for 5 years, following every lead, tracking every appearance of her name. Sang-ho never said why. He didn't have to. When the Atlanta culture piece appeared in his news feed, Jiwoo almost scrolled past. He'd seen hundreds of photos of Maya over the years, always alone, always careful. But this time, There was a child beside her. Ji-woo zoomed in on the little girl's face. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. He knew exactly whose eyes those were. The strategy meeting in Sang-ho's glass-walled penthouse was tense. Representatives from 3 allied organizations sat around the table, negotiating territory agreements that would reshape Seoul's underground economy. Sang-ho listened impassively, his expression revealing nothing as millions of dollars changed hands through coded language and careful euphemism. When Ji-woo entered without knocking, the room went silent. It was unheard of. In 12 years of service, Ji-woo had never interrupted. Every eye turned to Sang-ho, waiting to see how he'd respond to this breach of protocol. He simply raised one hand. Out. The room emptied in seconds. When the door closed, Sang-ho spoke quietly. This had better be. Ji-woo placed the tablet on the table. Sir, you need to see this. Sang-ho looked down at the screen. The world tilted. Maya. 5 years older, softer somehow, laugh lines at her eyes that hadn't been there in Seoul. Still beautiful. Still the woman who'd vanished from his life without explanation, leaving a void he'd never been able to fill. His networks had searched for months before he'd forced himself to stop, to accept that she'd chosen to disappear. But it was the child beside her that made his breath stop. He zoomed in with trembling fingers. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her curly hair caught back with colorful ribbons, her small hand reaching toward a painting. And her face, it was like looking at his own childhood photographs. His sister's 3 children didn't resemble him this strongly. The set of her jaw, the shape of her eyes, the way she focused with absolute intensity on what interested her. 5 years old, Ji-woo said quietly. The timeline matches Atlanta. When she left. Sang-ho's mind raced through memory like shuffling photographs. Maya's sudden departure. The empty apartment, her belongings gone as if she'd never existed. The months he'd spent searching, hiring investigators, using every resource at his disposal. The pain of her absence that had eventually scarred over into acceptance. She'd been pregnant. She'd known. She'd chosen to keep it from him. Fury and wonder warred in his chest. Rage that she'd stolen this from him. That he'd missed 5 years of his daughter's life. That she'd made this choice without giving him any say. And beneath the anger, something more powerful. The staggering knowledge that he had a child. That somewhere in Atlanta, a little girl with his eyes existed, and he hadn't known. I want everything, he told Ji-woo, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. Birth certificate, medical records, school enrollment, address. Everything. Within the hour. Ji-woo nodded and disappeared. Sang-ho sat alone in the empty conference room, staring at the photo of his daughter. He traced her face on the screen with one finger, gentle as a prayer. Within 90 minutes, he had her full dossier. Lena Marie Johnson. Born October 14 at Emory University Hospital. Father listed as unknown on the birth certificate. He'd deal with that later. Immunization records showing she was healthy. Enrollment at a private kindergarten that specialized in arts education. Home address in a modest neighborhood. He memorized every detail, hungry for information about this child he'd never met. But as his networks activated to establish surveillance and protection, Ji-woo returned with darker intelligence. Sir, we're not the only ones who've identified the photo. The Zhang Syndicate has also connected the child to you. Zhang Wei is already moving assets to Atlanta. Sang-ho's blood went cold. Zhang Wei, his primary rival, had been looking for leverage against him for years. Now he'd found it in the form of a 5-year-old girl who didn't even know her father existed. The race was on. And if Sang-ho lost, his daughter would pay the price. Maya's call lasted 17 seconds. Her whispered voice rough with terror. Sang-ho, they found us. Our daughter has your eyes, and they're going to kill us both. Background noise. Men speaking Korean, footsteps, her daughter's quiet whimper. Then the line went dead. Sang-ho was already moving. Phone pressed to his ear as he strode through his penthouse. Keep her quiet. Away from windows. I'm coming. His voice carried a tone Maya had never heard before. Raw fear beneath the command. The control cracking to reveal something desperate and human. His private plane was airborne within 30 minutes. But his Atlanta team was already mobilizing. He'd established assets in every major American city years ago. Legitimate businesses fronting for networks that could move people, weapons, or information at a moment's notice. Now those carefully built structures activated for their true purpose. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Red truck. Alley behind your house. 3 minutes. Trust no one else. She grabbed Lena and the emergency bag she'd packed years ago, always prepared but never expecting to actually use it. They slipped out the back door as voices called to each other inside her home. The red truck sat idling in the alley, driver's side door open. A Korean woman with cropped hair gestured them in without speaking. The driver moved with terrifying precision through Atlanta's late-night streets. Maya watched through the rear window as black SUVs converged on her neighborhood. Their coordination speaking of professional training. These weren't common criminals. They were hunters. At a shuttered warehouse in an industrial district, the woman transferred them to an unmarked van, then vanished without a word. The van's rear doors opened to reveal a small medical team. 2 men and a woman in civilian clothes with professional equipment. Any injuries? One asked in accented English, already scanning them with a handheld device. You're bleeding, the woman said, gently touching Maya's arm. She hadn't realized the broken window had cut her. As they cleaned and bandaged the wound, Lena clutched her stuffed elephant bow and asked the question that broke Maya's heart. Where's my mommy's friend? On his way, little one, the kind-faced man said, offering her a juice box. He's very worried about you. They moved twice more. To a safe house, then to a private airfield where a sleek jet waited with engines already running. Every transition was smooth, professional, executed by people who clearly answered to someone powerful enough to command absolute loyalty. 12 hours after Maya made that desperate phone call, they were somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. Lena had finally fallen asleep, curled against Maya's side with bow tucked under her chin. The cabin was luxury incarnate. Leather seats, polished wood, attentive staff who brought food and blankets without being asked. Maya sat rigid despite her exhaustion, unable to rest. Through the window, she watched clouds pass beneath them like a white ocean. Somewhere ahead lay Seoul. And Sangho. For 5 years, she'd convinced herself she'd made the right choice by running, by keeping Lena's existence secret. Now that choice had put her daughter in mortal danger, and the only person who could protect them was the man she'd feared would corrupt everything she wanted to build. When the plane landed, she'd face him. The father Lena had never known. The man Maya had never stopped loving, even as she'd fled from everything he represented. The man whose world of blood and power had finally caught up to them both. The plane door opened to reveal Sangho standing on the tarmac of a private airfield outside Seoul, flanked by 2 guards in dark suits. Dawn light caught the sharp planes of his face, and Maya's breath stopped. He was exactly as she remembered, immaculately dressed even at this early hour, radiating that controlled power that made people instinctively step back. But his expression was unguarded in a way she'd never seen. Raw emotion flickering across features usually schooled to reveal nothing. His eyes went immediately to the sleeping child in Maya's arms. Maya descended the stairs on trembling legs, every muscle tense. She'd spent 5 years avoiding this moment, and now here it was, inevitable as sunrise. Sangho's gaze finally lifted to meet hers, and what she saw there made her throat tighten. Not anger, though she'd expected that. Devastation. You should have told me, he said, voice rough with an emotion he wasn't bothering to hide. Before Maya could formulate a response, Lena stirred against her shoulder. The little girl blinked awake, confused by unfamiliar sounds and light. Her gaze found the man standing before them and locked on. Father and daughter stared at each other for the first time. The resemblance was shocking. Even knowing it intellectually, seeing them face to face drove it home with visceral force. The same intense dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets, the same determined set to the jaw, the same way of focusing completely on what captured their attention. It was like watching past and present collapse into a single moment. Who are you? Lena asked with the directness that always surprised adults expecting childhood shyness. Sangho crouched slowly to her level, a gesture of respect that caught Maya off guard. He'd always carried himself with the assumption of superiority, the bearing of someone accustomed to looking down. Now he made himself smaller, meeting a child's eyes as an equal. My name is Sang-ho, he said carefully. I'm a friend of your mother's. I'm here to keep you safe. Lena studied him with unnerving intensity. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? Something flickered across Sang-ho's face, pain perhaps, or recognition of how complicated that question truly was. His lips quirked in an expression that wasn't quite a smile. I'm trying to be a good guy. For you. He glanced up at Maya, and in that moment she saw something she never expected to see in Lee Sang-ho: vulnerability. Not weakness, he could never be weak, but an openness, a willingness to be seen in all his uncertainty and hope and fear. The drive to the safe house wound through increasingly remote mountain roads. Lena pressed her face to the window, fascinated by the unfamiliar landscape. Maya watched Sang-ho watching their daughter, his expression complex and unreadable. The compound was luxury masked as fortress, traditional Korean architecture with modern security, perched on a mountainside with sweeping views. Guards patrolled the perimeter with professional precision. Every entrance had biometric locks. It was beautiful and isolating and absolutely impenetrable. That night, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar room, Maya wandered the hallway. Light spilled from Lena's doorway. She stopped there and looked in. Sang-ho sat beside Lena's bed, utterly still, simply watching his daughter sleep. The expression on his face was something Maya had never seen before. Wonder and grief intertwined. The look of a man confronting everything he'd lost, and everything he'd never known he wanted. His hand hovered near Lena's curly hair, as if he wanted to touch it but didn't dare. Afraid of waking her, or perhaps afraid the moment wasn't real. Maya's throat tightened. Whatever else Lee Sang-ho was, criminal, killer, king of shadows. In this moment he was simply a father meeting his child for the first time, grieving the 5 years he could never reclaim. The safe house was beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel. Traditional Korean architecture seamlessly integrated with modern luxury, surrounded by forest and mountain silence. For the first few days, Maya kept Lena close, hyper-aware of the armed guards patrolling the perimeter, and the cameras monitoring every entrance. But Lena's natural curiosity was impossible to contain forever. On the 4th morning, Maya found her daughter missing from the bedroom they shared. Panic seized her until she heard Lena's voice drifting from down the hall. She followed it to Sang-ho's study. The little girl stood beside his desk, examining the papers scattered across its surface with the same intense focus she brought to her picture books. Sang-ho sat very still, watching her as if she might vanish if he moved too quickly. What are you doing? Lena asked. Working, he said simply. What kind of work? Maya tensed in the doorway, wondering how he'd answer. But Sang-ho chose his words with care. I make sure people do what they promise to do. It's complicated. Lena tilted her head, considering this. Mommy says complicated means grown-ups don't want to explain. Sang-ho laughed, a real laugh surprised out of him, warm and genuine. Maya had heard him laugh before during those 3 months in Seoul, but never like this. Never with such unguarded delight. Over the following days, a tentative bond formed between father and daughter. Lena discovered Sang-ho couldn't draw to save his life, and appointed herself his teacher. They sat on the floor together, Lena demonstrating how to make an elephant. You have to give him a happy face, see? While Sang-ho produced something that looked more like a melting boulder. Maybe try again, Lena said diplomatically. He taught her Korean words in exchange. She was a quick study, her child's brain absorbing language with ease. Appa means father, he explained carefully, watching her face. Do you have children? She asked with the innocence of a 5-year-old who hadn't yet connected the dots. Yes, he said quietly. I have a daughter. She's very smart and brave. Maya watched from the margins, torn between relief at having protection and terror at what this proximity meant. She saw how Sang-ho looked at Lena. Like she was something precious and fragile. Like he was constantly aware of how easily she could be hurt. She saw how he edited himself around the child, choosing words carefully, hiding the sharp edges of his nature. One evening, she found them on the floor, drawing together. Lena had sketched 3 figures in crayon, stick people with carefully added details. Curly hair on one, a dress on another, a suit on the third. That's you. Lena pointed at Maya's figure, then at Sang-ho's. That's Sang-ho. And that's me. Where are we? Sang-ho asked gently. Home, Lena said simply, as if the answer was obvious. Maya's heart broke because she knew this couldn't last. The safe house was temporary. The danger was still out there. And even if they survived it, what future could they possibly have? Sang-ho's world was violence and power. She'd fled from it once. How could she possibly bring Lena into it permanently? But when she looked at Sang-ho's expression as he studied his daughter's drawing, she saw something that terrified her more than any external threat. Determination. He wasn't thinking about temporary solutions or calculated risk management. He was thinking about forever. About making this family real. He was thinking about keeping them. And Lee Sang-ho always got what he wanted. While domestic peace bloomed in the safe house, Sang-ho's investigation into the attack continued. Jin-soo, his head of security, requested a private meeting on the compound's secure terrace. The older man's face was grim. The assassins were Zhang's syndicate, Jin-soo confirmed, pulling up surveillance footage on his tablet. But their intelligence was too precise. They knew the layout of the house, the child's bedroom location, even the emergency protocols. Someone inside our organization provided that information. Sang-ho's expression didn't change, but his hands tightened on the terrace railing. Show me. The footage was from Atlanta, 2 weeks before the attack. A restaurant near Maya's neighborhood. The timestamp showed early evening. Min-jun sat across from a man Sang-ho recognized immediately, one of Zhang Wei's senior lieutenants. They spoke for 40 minutes. Money changed hands under the table. Min-yun. Sang-ho said the name quietly, tasting betrayal. 12 years. Min-jun had been with him for 12 years, rising through the ranks to become his most trusted lieutenant. They'd built this organization together, weathered wars and crises side by side. Min-jun was practically his brother. There's more, Jin-soo said grimly. Financial records show he's been feeding information to the Zhangs for at least 6 months. He's been planning this. The confrontation happened that evening in the compound's command center. Sang-ho waited until Min-jun arrived for what he thought was a routine briefing, then locked the door behind him. You're working with the Zhangs. It wasn't a question. Min-jun's face showed no surprise, no denial. Just cold calculation. You've gone soft, Hyung, he said, the honorific now edged with mockery. Chasing after a woman who left you. Protecting a child you don't even know. You're weak. The organization needs someone strong. The organization is mine, Sang-ho said quietly, dangerously. The organization belongs to whoever can hold it, Min-jun countered. And right now you're too distracted to hold anything. Your enemies see it. Your allies see it. You've made yourself vulnerable for sentiment. The truth of it hit like a blade. Sang-ho understood suddenly what his enemies saw. A man whose untouchable facade had cracked, revealing something that could be hurt. His love for Lena, his need to protect her, wasn't strength. In their world, it was fatal weakness. So you allied with Zhang Wei to what? Kill me and take over? To save the organization from your sentimentality, Min-jun said. To preserve what we built before you threw it away for a woman and a bastard child. Sang-ho's hand twitched toward the gun at his hip, but he didn't draw. Not yet. Get out. If I see you again, you die. Min-yun smiled coldly. You should have killed me. That's your real weakness, Hyung. You still think mercy matters. After he left, Sang-ho stood alone in the command center, staring at the screens showing every angle of the compound. The terrible truth crystallized. As long as he remained in power, Lena was a target. His enemies would use her to destroy him. The only way to protect her was to make himself untouchable, by making himself powerless. That night, Maya found him on the terrace, staring at the lights of Seoul spread out below like a glittering web he'd spent years weaving. What will you do? She asked. Sang-ho didn't look at her. Something I should have done years ago, he said quietly. Walk away. Sang-ho called the meeting for midnight in the compound's secure conference room. Only 2 people attended. Ji-woo and Jin-soo, the only associates whose loyalty he could still trust without question. They sat across from him, waiting as he organized his thoughts. I'm going to burn it down, he said finally. All of it. The organization, the alliances, the networks. Everything I've built. I'm going to cooperate with the Korean authorities and provide evidence of every operation. Mind the Zhang's, Minjun's faction. I'll dismantle the entire criminal infrastructure. Jiwoo and Jinsu exchanged glances. Sir, Jinsu said carefully, that's suicide. The moment you testify, every organization in Asia will want you dead. Not if everyone who wants me dead is also in prison, Sang-ho countered. I've documented everything. Every deal, every transaction, every alliance. I'll give prosecutors enough evidence to take down every major player simultaneously. The resulting chaos will tear the underworld apart, but it will also eliminate the reasons anyone would target my family. Your family? Jiwoo repeated the words as if testing them. The woman and the child. My daughter, Sang-ho said, and something in his voice made both men look away. She deserves better than this. Better than me. But the only way I can give her that is to destroy everything that makes her a target. He told Maya that evening, standing in the compound's garden as cherry blossoms fell around them like snow. She listened in silence, her expression moving from shock to horror to something more complex. They'll kill you, she said finally. The moment you testify, you're a dead man. Not if everyone who might want me dead is also in prison, he repeated his earlier logic. I'll take them all down together. And after? Her voice cracked. What happens to you after? Witness protection, probably. A new identity. A quiet life. He looked at her intently. A life where Lena can be safe. Where she can go to school, have friends, not look over her shoulder. Where she can be a child instead of leverage. You'd give up everything? Maya whispered. Your power, your empire, your identity? I'd give up anything for her, Sang-ho said simply. Then softer. For both of you. If you'll have me. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I left because I thought you'd never choose anything over power. I thought you'd corrupt her, make her part of your world. I would have, he admitted. 5 years ago, I would have tried to control you both, to possess you like I possessed everything else. But she changed that. The moment I saw her face, I understood what actually matters. And it's not this. He gestured at the compound, the city beyond. It's her. It's you. It's the chance to be something other than what I've been. The next 48 hours were chaos. Sang-ho leaked documents to prosecutors and international news agencies simultaneously, triggering a cascade of arrests across 3 countries. Law enforcement agencies that had pursued him for years suddenly found themselves with comprehensive evidence of criminal operations they'd barely known existed. The underworld erupted. Alliances shattered. Violence flared as organizations turned on each other. Everyone scrambling to save themselves or destroy rivals before being destroyed. And Minjun, watching his carefully built coup dissolve into chaos, realized exactly what Sang-ho had done. He gathered Zhang Wei's remaining soldiers and forced his way toward the compound, determined to kill Sang-ho before the final testimony could take place. If he couldn't have the empire, no one would. They came at dawn. Minjun and a team of armed men breached the compound's outer perimeter with explosives and overwhelming force. Sang-ho had anticipated this. Most of his guards had been evacuated, replaced by law enforcement officers preparing to take him into custody for protective testimony. But Minjun was desperate and fast, cutting through security with the intimate knowledge of someone who'd helped design it. Maya heard the explosions from the main house. She grabbed Lena and ran toward the reinforced safe room Sang-ho had shown her. But Lena pulled away, terrified. Where's Sang-ho? Baby, we have to. Where is he? Lena's eyes were wide with fear, not for herself but for the man she'd come to trust. They found him in the living room where hours before he'd been teaching Lena to write her name in Korean characters. Now he stood facing the door as footsteps pounded through the hallway. He turned when he heard them, his face transforming with terror. I told you to get to the safe room. The door burst open. Minjun stood there with a gun leveled at Sang-ho's chest, 3 armed men behind him. You destroyed everything, he snarled. 12 years of work. Gone because you're playing house with a woman and a bastard child. Sang-ho shifted, positioning himself between Minjun and his family. She's my daughter. And she deserves better than this world. Better than me. You're weak, Minjun spat. No, Sang-ho said quietly. I was weak when I thought power mattered more than people. I was weak when I built an empire on fear and called it strength. Choosing them, protecting them, that's the strongest thing I've ever done. Minjun's finger tightened on the trigger. But Maya appeared in the doorway behind him, holding the small pistol one of Sang-ho's guards had given her days ago. Her hands shook but her voice didn't. Put it down. I won't let you hurt her father. Minjun pivoted toward her, but Sang-ho moved first, not to attack but to shield Maya. The gun fired. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Sang-ho staggered but didn't go down, his hand pressed to his shoulder where blood bloomed across his shirt. Jin-soo and armed officers flooded the room seconds later. Minjun was subdued, disarmed, forced to the floor. Medics appeared from nowhere, working on Sang-ho's wound even as he tried to stand. I'm fine. I'm Sun-oh. Lena's voice cut through the chaos. She stood frozen in the doorway, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest, staring at the blood. Her eyes were huge and terrified, and Sang-ho realized this was what he'd spent his whole life trying to prevent. His daughter seeing violence, being touched by the darkness of his world. Come here, little one, he said gently, opening his good arm despite the medic's protests. I'm okay. Lena ran to him and buried her face against his chest, careful of his injury. You're bleeding, she whispered. Just a scratch, he lied. The words his own mother had used when he was young and she tried to shelter him from his father's world. I promise. I'm okay. He held her as the medics worked, as officers secured the scene, as his empire burned down around him. And for the first time in his life, Lee Sang-ho felt something like peace. 3 months later, spring had transformed the protected facility's garden into something almost beautiful. Sang-ho sat on a bench while officers stood discreetly at the perimeter, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. His shoulder had healed, leaving a scar he told himself he'd earned. The trial was over. Minjun and dozens of others were imprisoned. The Zhang syndicate had fractured into warring factions. The criminal infrastructure Sang-ho had spent years building was dismantled, its pieces scattered beyond repair. In exchange for his comprehensive testimony, he'd received a dramatically reduced sentence. 5 years, eligible for parole in 3, and guaranteed placement in witness protection afterward. The garden gate opened. Maya appeared first, and Sang-ho's breath caught the way it always did. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Behind her, Lena ran forward, her curls bouncing, a paper clutched in her hand. I made this for you, she announced, thrusting the drawing at him. It was another family portrait, 3 figures with a building labeled home, in a child's unsteady hand. But this time she'd added details. Flowers around the house, a sun in the corner, careful attention to making everyone smile. It's beautiful, Sang-ho said, his throat tight. The best thing I've ever seen. Lena climbed onto the bench beside him while Maya sat on his other side. For a moment, they simply existed together as cherry blossoms fell around them like benediction. When you get out, will you live with us? Lena asked with the directness that always undid him. Sang-ho looked at Maya, who nodded slowly. Permission and promise and something that looked like hope. If your mother will have me, yes. And you won't be a bad guy anymore? Lena pressed. I'll spend every day trying to be the father you deserve, Sang-ho said. That's my promise to you. Maya spoke for the first time since sitting down. We'll wait. 3 years or 5, we'll wait. You gave up everything for us. We can give you time. The visit ended too soon. As they stood to leave, Lena turned back and waved. Sang-ho waved back, his other hand pressing against the glass that separated them. For the first time in his life, he was powerless, imprisoned, vulnerable, stripped of everything that had once defined him. And for the first time in his life, he was free. For years later, a small house in rural Washington state glowed in the afternoon sun. A man who was once Lee Sang-ho, now living as Samuel Lee, jogged alongside a wobbling bicycle while his daughter learned to balance. I'm doing it, Appa. Lena called in Korean, her face alight with triumph. You're doing it, he confirmed, ready to catch her if she fell. Maya watched from the porch, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. He'd been out for a year. The parole hearing had determined he was no longer a threat. Testimony from prosecutors, years of cooperation, Perfect behavior. He worked construction now, his hands that once commanded empires now building homes for others. Lena caught herself, laughed, pedaled harder. Sang-ho kept pace, his heart full of something he'd spent 36 years not knowing he needed. It wasn't the life any of them had imagined. It was better, ordinary, precious, safe. Sang-ho had given up his throne for it, surrendered everything he'd once believed made him powerful. And watching his daughter's joy, feeling his unborn child move beneath Maya's skin, he knew he'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. The dragon had learned to be a man. The man had learned to be a father. And the father had learned that true power lay not in domination, but in sacrifice and love.